Hi, hello, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. For the rest of you, adjust your glasses so that you can see what's going on. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining us as usual is the brains of the operation, Aaron William Freeland. Are the glasses okay, Aaron? Do you
Uh,
need some? Do you need some defogger?
I think they're doing okay. I'm just trying to find the right. They're supposed to have this anti-glare spray on them, so like light doesn't reflect off them and blind people, and so you can actually see my eyes. And yeah, that's the
You mean
stuff.
this shite? You mean this shite? Yeah.
Yeah, that crap.
Can you see my eyes? Can you see
I
how
can.
blurry they are and faded and yeah, and washed out with cataracts? Yeah. Well, I hope it. I hope. I hope it works fine. You look great. You know what? I'm going to make a little adjustment myself here. And maybe
Appreciate that.
I'll go this
No,
way.
I picked up a screw in the tire on the way home from the GO station today, so
Oh, I
gotta.
don't you hate when that happens?
Just so annoying. So I've made an appointment uh, with Canadian Tire, Canada's Garage, to get it fixed for Friday. So gonna check tomorrow evening to see if the tire is still relatively inflated before I drive over. If not, I'll swap it out for the spare.
There you go.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have a real spare, or do you have one of
I
the little
I have a non-frosted donut.
a non-frosted? Oh, okay, that means it's small.
Yeah, the tiny one.
Yeah, I have. Well, if you have to replace that tire, because as most people do know, when a screw goes in your tire, as long as it's in the flat part, it's in that part of your tire. So your tire is like this. As long as it's in that part, you can fix it. If it's up near the sidewall, you got to replace the tire. And I never replace just one tire, and I'm sure everybody's the same. I always replace two tires. So I'll have a spare, if you will, of the same tire that um, the same type of tires. So I'll end up using that one. But it's hard because you don't buy tires every year. At least you hope you don't buy tires every
Yeah.
year. So what happens is it's like the new, well, used to be. Now the government's clamping down. It's like when you get a new phone, you need a new remote. You can't use the old remote. You can't use the old tire. So you're stuck going, well, will I ever get to use that tire? I wonder.
Well, I mean, the thinking is if they do say that it's too close to the sidewall and I do have to get a new tire, I can get two brand new all weather tires for the front. I'll have a full size spare, like you mentioned, for the trunk. And away we go. I don't necessarily need to change the rear tires really for anything because it's a front wheel drive. So,
There you go.
I'm
So it's all
primarily
good.
concerned with that.
Yeah, and you know what? Not on the subject of tires, there's the exhibition. There's there's Major League Baseball playoffs, and there's snow tires to think about. Winter's here. those are the wonderful things we have to think about, right?
Oh,
All
most
right,
definitely.
Aaron, everything's going fine for you.
Oh yeah, for the most part, everything's all right.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, let's get to it, and let's do what we're here to do. And I'm thinking maybe we'll start. I don't know. Let's start with the CFL. The
Sure, we can
Riders
do that.
had defensive back Robert Javier. Yeah. Is it Avier or Javier or Yave?
I'm never
Javier?
100% sure how to pronounce it. Based on the fact that his first name is Bob, I'm probably going to go with Javier, because I don't understand how a lot of American families choose to pronounce their names. I just know it's not how I expect it to be pronounced.
I spend a long time watching Italian names of second generation Italians, how they don't pronounce the name properly. But you know what? That's neither here or there. Actually, I can find out for you. Maybe I can find out for you.
Well,
Maybe.
so just for a little bit of background while you're looking for that, Frank, Robert Javier is 6'1", 195 pounds. He was signed by the Tennessee Titans as an undrafted free agent following the 2024 NFL draft and has spent the training camp so far this year with the team. He was 5 seasons at Towson, played 36 games as a Tiger, had back-to-back all-conference accolades in 2022 and 2023, and became the first Towson cornerback to be an All-CAA since 2014. He had an especially strong final 2 seasons at Towson, defending 26 passes over his final 21 games and ranked seventh in FCS in passes defended per game in 2022. So nice big pickup for them. He as a senior, he actually had 8 pass breakups, which is good, and 77 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 6 interceptions. So the Riders are getting somebody who is capable on the D end of it and knows how to defend the pass properly.
Nope, can't help you with it. They also signed wide receiver Colton Hunchak.
So they signed him as they also released offensive lineman Tariq Stewart. Hunchak's 5'11", 212 pounds, enjoys the roughies after having spent 4 seasons with the Stamps. The Calgary, Alberta native was selected by the Stamps in the 8th round in the 2019 CFL draft. Over 35 games played, he has 65 receptions for 606 yards. He originally played for York University between 2015 and 2018. He recorded 1,990 total yards and 18 touchdowns over 27 games. So he'll be a valuable addition to their receiver corps.
So Jeremiah Mazzoli's going to start for the Red Blacks versus the Riders.
Yeah. They had noticed that Dustin Crum was taking second team reps, so that was their first tip off. Drew Brown was spotted on the field in his uni, but also wearing a walking boot on Tuesday. So Bob Dice said that it looks like Jeremiah is getting the nod. Brown was replaced by Masoli in Week 17's game against Montreal after the team ruled Brown out with an ankle injury. Before leaving the game, Brown was 8 of 16 for 69 yards and no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Masoli, by comparison, in relief, was 17 of 26 for 218 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. So things might be looking up a little bit for the Red Blacks.
Yeah, when they have an either-or situation with their quarterback, not because one's not good enough, but in fact the other is true. That's really good. The Argos add 4 players to the roster. Any of them a quarterback?
Sadly, no. They signed a linebacker, Clayton Glasgow, defensive lineman Jalen Green, and defensive backs Willie Drew and Derek Slivka. Glasgow, 6', 225. Spent the last 2 years with the San Diego Strike Force and the Bay Area Panthers of the Indoor Football League. So he knows how to conduct himself in tight quarters. That's a good thing. He has, when in his 2 seasons with Indiana State, he had 117 tackles, 18 for loss, and 4.5 sacks. Green, 6'1", 245 pounds, spent 4 seasons at James Madison. He's originally from Baltimore. He was also the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year with All-American honors and first team All-Conference. Drew is 6', 185 pounds, and most recently spent time with the Carolina Panthers during their training camp this season. He was the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year in 2023 after compiling 34 tackles, 6 INTs, and 16 pass breakups. Slika is 6'3", 215 pounds. Spent minicamp with the Colts in 24. He's originally from Waterloo, New York. Played 4 years at Ithaca between 2020 and 2023.
Absolutely. Lions add 6 to practice roster.
Yeah, so the Lions have added Jared Bernhardt, Deveron Harper, Natorian Watts, Mike Smith Jr., Terrence Taylor, and Amici Uzodinma. This is all a group of players that have been on the periphery for a lot of the season. But they've decided they're going to add all these players to their roster just in anticipation of a stretch one, and with Rourke being reanointed as their starting quarterback, I believe, for the remainder of the season, if what I read is correct.
Absolutely. The Ticats signed Jamal Peters to a 1-year extension. This is while he's injured.
Yeah, this is obviously the faith that the Ticats have in Jamal. They're going to keep him in Hamilton through 2025. He started 12 games for the Ticats this season, recording 38 total tackles and 4 interceptions. So as part of their decor, he's obviously valuable. But they've also added American defensive back Cameron Dantzler, who played 2 games last season for the New Orleans Saints. He suited up in 37 games over his 4 seasons in the NFL with the Saints and the Minnesota Vikings. So he looks to be an interesting addition as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Aaron, what do you think of the well, the all the teams now are providing us Aboriginal versions of their logos. I'm sorry, I'm enthralled with some of them. I just saw the new the Rider one, which I thought was impressive. The Argo one I've seen, and I've seen some other ones, and they're all really impressive. It's really nice that they're tipping a hat to our Aboriginal brothers and sisters.
I do appreciate it. My concern with this sort of thing is uh, that it descends into pandering and strictly performative as opposed to having an actual effect. I know that the Argonauts are Aboriginal, and their Day of Truth and Reconciliation hoodies were going for $80 a pop. I'm not sure how much of that was actually going to First Nations organizations to help them out, or if any donations were being made for that. Unfortunately, the Real Sports site wasn't all that specific. I do appreciate the outreach to First Nations artists to try to get their interpretation of the logos. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, it can veer into the, well, we're strictly doing this on a performative basis as opposed to taking any real action.
Well, if we assume they're not culturally hijacking, the Aboriginal people, I like the fact that they're uh, just simply doing something that recognizes a people that I guess this is a reminder. I look at it as a reminder to keeping the thoughts and our understanding of the pain that Aboriginal people have felt over the years. It to me it reignites that a little bit in me. It reminds me of them, and it also gives me an opportunity to see my people being, CFL teams recognizing Aboriginal folks. And I hope your fears are incorrect. Can I sit here and argue the point and say, well, definitely they're not? I can't, but I'm going to choose to look at it as just a tip of the hat to Aboriginal people, and as you said, giving Aboriginal artists a chance to see, you know, what they want to do, looking at CFL logos. So it is what it is. I
Mhm.
wish I could sit here and tell you without a doubt it's all meant with really good intention. It's not about selling stuff. Um, all I can do at some point is trust that the CFL is doing it for good reason, not bad. And I'm going to say that if I don't hear about bad reasons being the reason they're doing it, I'm not going to assume it. So that's where I sit on it. But I respect and understand your point. It's valid. All right, let's go to Major League Baseball. The Pirates and first baseman Rowdy Tellez missed 4 plate appearances. That means he loses out on $200,000.
This is a tough situation. For the short time that Rowdy was in Toronto, he became a bit of a fan favorite just based on the fact that he would crank out double after double after double. His contract this year with the Pirates was saying that if he reached 425 plate appearances, it would trigger a $200,000 bonus. He found out today that he was being designated for assignment, which means that he wouldn't get any more major league at bats this year. 4 plate appearances, or basically 1 or maybe 2 games at most shy of hitting the mark, which is that's just gotta suck. I'm trying to think of other instances where something happens to a player like this that's comparable, but none of the things that I can think of have the same sort of financial well, I mean, he's still getting paid, obviously, but he's missing out on a bonus. I can't think of a lot of other situations where that's happened to individuals, which I got to be honest, just sucks for him, man. I kind of wish he'd gotten those last few plate appearances.
Well, if there's a reason for him to feel any kind of bitterness, I think the fact that the team was so bad, um, and made what he could contribute irrelevant. essentially. His contribution now is irrelevant because of where the Pirates stand. They're in last place. They're 73 and 84, 465 winning percentage, not anywhere near a wild card and not anywhere near where they need to put their best foot forward. And so now what happens in these cases is teams start thinking of financial uh, savings. And the Pirates have always been known as a team that does not spend money. So when you sign with the Pirates and you don't know the team's going to be that good and you're relying on extra at bats or a certain amount of at bats, you got to know when you sign with the team. If you're close and they're not, neither are you to getting more
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Um, let's go to Formula One analysis. Verstappen shows his petty side when FIA foolishly punishes him for cursing. Bad boy.
So for those that haven't caught the drama, there was a formal news conference in which he was asked how he thinks the car was performing, and in his word, he said the car is effed. Only he didn't say effed. He said the censorable version of the word, and the FIA decreed that due to his swearing, the FIA said that he had to complete a day of community service. Now, the crackdown has been a while coming. I mean, you listen to the team radio, and you can hear, it's delayed. It's not live because they bleep all the curse words. Yuki Tsunoda is one of the worst for that, but at least he does it in the car, where the control room has the opportunity to censor that before it gets popped up on your screen. Um, I mean, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur and Mercedes boss Toto Wolff were both summoned to speak to the stewards last November about their language at a news conference in Las Vegas. And FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem had publicly rebuked cursing earlier this month. Um, but Verstappen was of the opinion, look, there's 5 or 6 year old kids watching. I can almost guarantee that they've heard worse words out of their parents and that they are eventually going to swear. I don't get what the big deal is, but this has also fueled speculation that if he doesn't get the treatment that he wants, apparently he is considering early retirement. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw them eyes go wide, Frank.
Listen, this is basic. This is basic decision making process that the organization wants to get into they want to get into the cockpit, right? They want to be in there. They want to get a feel for what's going on. They want to know what's going on. And what's going on in the cockpit is a lot of tension, a lot of pressure, a lot of angst. And I don't think he's right about every kid has heard that kind of language because not all of them are listening to guys in cockpits or listening to even look, it happens. We watch hockey, we watch football, we watch every sport. A hot mic eventually picks up something, you know. But the fact is, because there's a group of people who don't like that kind of language and don't want their children to hear it, and they actually aren't hypocritical. They actually don't use that kind of language. So they would kind of like not to hear that kind of stuff. It's an opinion, it's a desire. And so organizations like the National Hockey League, NFL football, Major League Baseball, and F1, who want those families to spend money, pay attention to it, you know, they're going to pay attention to those folks. They're because it's all about customers, right? And let's face it, just because I'm okay with it, I can't expect everybody to be okay with it. So what happens is F1 has to make a decision that keeps them, on the good side of families that don't want that kind of language shared with them. I get it. People swear. I'm one. And it's not always, in a low pressure situation. It's usually in a high pressure situation when you're not thinking. That's when I notice that I do it. I don't do it with a plan. And so if they're going to get into a cockpit where there's a lot of tension, a lot of angst, and a lot of pressure, and a lot of money at stake, and they're sitting in a vehicle, you're going to get that kind of stuff. So I guess the best thing to do, Aaron, is they just put a time delay on what's going on and just go beepity beepity beep when they do that kind of stuff. That's what they're going to have to do. End of story.
The other consideration as well is they are owned by a media company called Liberty Media, who purchased them outright in 2017. And Liberty Media are nothing if not savvy when it comes to putting their product on the air.
There you go.
So, but and the other thing that we have to remember here is in the case of Verstappen or even Wolf and Vasseur in Vegas, their cursing came in news conferences that weren't designed to be consumed by the general public.
And there
F1
you go.
F1 didn't have to make the press conference available.
Exactly.
F1 didn't have to say, "Hey, look, Max Verstappen swore. We're finding him at a private press conference." It's not, like it's one of those things where you're supposed to take the information, print it, and maybe eliminate some of the more questionable stuff. But they brought it directly to the fore, saying, "Uh-oh, our champion swore. That's a no-no," and the champion's basically gone, come on."
Who not every racer is happy with the race they had after,
No.
right? And when we know again, it's all about that pressure and how they feel. Let's move over to the NBA, the National Basketball Association. The Raptor fans torn over team's decision to retire Vince Carter's jersey. Kyle Lowry should be first. Is that what people are thinking and saying?
There are two very different schools of thought. One of this is that Vince Carter was a jerk and walked away from the team when they potentially needed
Yikes!
him the most. The other is, well, he helped put basketball on the map in Canada and was a great team ambassador
Uh,
before he went to greener pastures.
uh,
There's another school of thought that says, Kyle Lowry was a great ambassador for the team and one of the key components in their NBA championship in 2019. Vince never brought us a championship. Why are we retiring his number first?
First of all, Aaron, and I know you didn't say that, but I am going to. I listen. I did a sports show back in the late '70s, going to the '90s, and in the '80s when basketball wasn't here yet. The fact that anybody thinks that basketball was created by the NBA in the Metro Toronto area, right? I'm not going to talk about everywhere else, but I did high school basketball for a very long time, for almost 20 years. And college basketball, university basketball. Basketball was very popular before the NBA came here. The NBA came here and people wanted a franchise here because they knew they had customers here. Basketball was a very popular sport in Canada. I know because I saw it firsthand. I did the play-by-play for the World Basketball Championship. I understood and understand basketball was popular here. It was popular here. If that's the reason they're going to put him up in lights, Vince Carter, then that's crazy. That's crazy. And I agree with you. He went to get. I think it wasn't it. He went to his university and he was getting some sort of award or graduation or something, and it was the night before a playoff game, I believe.
I
That's what
believe
you're
so.
referring to,
Yeah.
right? Something like that.
Mhm.
I totally respect the fact that he was proud of his accomplishments there. Um, a playoff game's pretty important in sports, but he was rich enough that he had his own plane, right? He had his own plane, so it wasn't like he had to stand in line at the airport to get back to the game. He had his own private plane at the time. But I don't think him being the reason that basketball is so popular is a fair reason for him to be put up there. His greatness, he brought the NBA to Toronto big time. He brought the NBA to Toronto. The NBA didn't bring basketball to Toronto. Basketball was in Toronto. So saluting him is all well and good. Saluting Lowry is all well and good. And I think picking one or the other to be first, I think is fool's gold.
You know what? I personally would like to see his jersey retirement ceremony should they go ahead with it, because Vince Carter might be one of the only players in the NBA to get booed at his own jersey retirement ceremony. I'm
Aaron,
just
you're
saying.
such a Oh my goodness, you're such a Richard. Holy
I'm a fan of chaos,
oh
man. If
my
it
god.
happens, I will
I
laugh.
guess you are. Boy, oh boy. And here I was thinking you were doing it because you were a fan, not an anti-fan. Let's go with the National Hockey League. The Montreal Canadiens beat the Devils 3-0. They earned back-to-back shutouts to start their preseason.
So this has been a really great start. The Canadians beat the Devils 3-0. It wasn't necessarily an exciting game, said Martin Saint Louis. Michael Pezzetta scored twice. The Devils traveled to Bell Center without most of their NHL regulars, and neither team converted on the power play, despite earning several opportunities. Montreal was 0 for 8. New Jersey was 0 for 6. Um, the execution wasn't great, said Saint Louis. But I think based on our advanced stance, we gave up 4 chances at 5-on-5. We've worked on that a lot this week, so I'm happy about it. Nick Suzuki also scored, and defenseman William Trudeau added 2 assists. The Canadians actually opened the exhibition season with a 5-0 victory over the Flyers on Monday with an almost entirely different lineup. Um, so it's one of those things that you sort of look at. This is an opportunity for them to really road test the team. Um, Samuel Montembeault stopped all 11 shots that he faced through the first 31 minutes and 28 seconds, and Connor Hughes saved 13 shots for the rest of the way. So their goaltending looks like it's where it is for the preseason.
Yeah.
It's either a good thing or a bad thing. Let's be honest at this point, but it's a positive sign.
Head coach Travis Green of the Ottawa Senators has decided to cancel training camp country club. What? What?
Well, so he arrived in Ottawa last spring, and he's brought a reputation with him from his time in Vancouver, of running challenging training camps and making sure his team is physically ready and on the same page for opening night. Green had good discussions with all of his new players leading up to this, um, and just basically told them, "Look, you guys need to be ready. I go hard out of the gate. You need to be ready to go hard out of the gate as well." In recent seasons, the Senators had terrible starts under former head coach DJ Smith, basically playing their way out of contention by the end of November. Um, when searching for answers as to why that happened, some of the Ottawa players believed that it might have been the way that the camps were conducted. Um, so it's a difference in approach and a shift in the culture and an attempt to get out of that whole "we're still rebuilding" thing that Ottawa's become known for over the past 7 years or so.
As two people who have followed the Ottawa Senators for the past, I'm going to say 4 years, 3, 4 years, we've followed them. And I think we both agree that this is a team that's underperformed in the past 3 or 4 years. And in those 3, 4 years, we've had reason to believe that there was some decent talent on the team, and it was the kind of talent that should should give them a better shot at making the playoffs. And it seems like they've fallen devilishly short, even though they beat the Devils. Um, and I think what he's getting at is basically the simple fact that in the National Hockey League, making the playoffs is such a challenge. And you said it, you can't put yourself against, behind the 8 ball early in the season because then you're playing catch up. And when you're playing catch up, it is really hard in the National Hockey League because if you have to catch up more than 4 or 5 teams, all 4 or 5 teams are not going to collapse. So you have to be one of those teams that will not collapse at the end of the season. And I talk about the Leafs all the time that they've got to put themselves in a playoff position and put themselves solidly in a playoff position. And I believe this Ottawa club can fit that definition. I think they can put themselves in a solid playoff position if they play to their ability and talent. And I think they can. They've made some changes there and they brought in some experienced Stanley Cup winners. They brought in some experienced players who know how to play the game and play it right and make it work. And we'll just see if those additions to the lineup help them get to a quick start, which is common knowledge in the National Hockey League. Everybody knows you got to have a quick start.
Yeah, the other thing is that over the past 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive shift in the attitudes and the culture in the NHL. Training camp used to be for getting into shape.
Mm,
Now it's just to fine tune. Players have, based on the salaries that they're getting paid, they have less and less time in the off season to heal up and rest up and have a little bit of fun and let loose before training camp start again. Getting into game shape isn't just showing up at camp for 3 weeks and all of a sudden you're ready to go. It is, as a lot of players are starting to realize, a year-round thing. And there's a
right.
lot more competition out there for positions, so you've got to make sure that you're ready.
Yep, and that's the big question that when players show up at training camp, the question that the organization asks, "Are you ready?" Because if you're not, you end up sliding down the list of players that get a shot to prove they're ready. So it's an interesting situation. Jets sign restricted free agent Cole Perfetti to a 2-year bridge contract.
So this is one of those players. Cole's had a lot of success with the Jets. Made the jump straight from the Moose. He wasn't expected to be as much of a standout as he has been. He had 19 goals and 38 points in 71 games for Winnipeg, his third in the season. Um, he found himself in the press box quite often as a healthy scratch, unfortunately, because he had fallen out of favor, with former coach Rick Bowness. Um, Now, what's essentially happened here is he's got himself a 2-year, $6.5 million contract. He gets 3 million in 24-25 and 3.5 in 25-26. They were unable to come to an agreement on an appropriate value for a longer term deal, so he's finally getting one of those bridge contracts, which
Smart
is
move.
going to walk him right to the edge of an
Smart
unrestricted
move.
free agency.
Smart move.
Yep.
It's the way it's got to be. You just can't assume a guy's worth, double figures a year. You just can't assume it. You've got to see it. It's got to show. Here's a guy who if there was a possibility that the Edmonton Oilers could spend their whole cap on this one player, Connor McDavid, nobody'd blink an eye. This guy's amazing, and he comes into this season, exhibition season, and the word I see being used is dazzles.
He Hey, yeah. They Edmonton dressed their top line, their top defensive pairing, and Leon Draisaitl, and they managed to drop the first battle of Alberta by a score of 6-3. And then going into Calgary, they lost. They lost 6-1 to a veterans-loaded Flames roster. Um, Huberdeau, Mantha, Matt Coronado each had multiple points in Edmonton, while Colin Zeri, Michael Backlund, Yegor Sharangovich, and Nazem Kadri had multiple point games in Calgary. Coronado and Zeri were especially impressive, each scoring 2 goals. But even in meaningless preseason games, Connor McDavid is still Connor McDavid. Um, he engineered the Oilers' first goal, turning a give and go with Alex Kennick-Leipert into an odd man rush before finding a wide open Zach Hyman. And in the third period, he finally got Oilers fans on the feet with a classic McDavid rush goal on a late power play. Um, you know, Making all the right plays, making all the right passes. Unfortunately, they couldn't get more to go into the back of the net. This only makes things muddier when it comes to the Calgary goal situation as well.
But when it comes to Edmonton, what we learned last year is you can play yourself out of the playoffs in November and be in the Stanley Cup final in May. What the heck? Well, they're the exception, right? They're the
They,
exception to the rule.
yeah, voodoo wizardry and BS, man. That's all I
When
can
you
say.
have a guy like that on your team, he can literally pick you up and carry you. I look forward to seeing him playing for Team Canada. That's what I look forward to.
100%.
Let's go to the Canucks. They kick off the 2024 preseason with a 3-1 victory over the Seattle Kraken.
So the goals were scored by Nils Höglander, Philip Roenick, and Pius Suter, with Archer Seelov stopping 18 of the 19 shots that he faced. Um, there were 2 fights, a lot of stuff after the whistle. It looks like the Canucks are trying to show that they have a little bit more snarl and a little bit more bite to them this year. Um, as The Canucks' best skater was actually Atu Rati. In 15 minutes and 10 seconds of ice time, he had an assist, 3 hits, and 2 block shots, as well as going 14 for 18 in the faceoff dot. Um, The other star up front was Jonathan Likaramaki, who finished with 2 assists in 16 minutes and 9 seconds of ice time. Um, he's been making all of the right moves. He's been impressing all of the right people when it comes to that. Um, it's you know what he's a very crafty, a smart guy. He's patient with the puck. All of that he managed to bring to the fore.
The Leafs lost both their preseason games. Let's talk about Stopchuk, who scored a shorthanded goal and helped the Senators trip up the Leafs 2-1. And once again, the Leaf power play is called into question.
Yeah, no, they were tied 1-1 going into the third, and Zacha Stopchuk scored what proved to be the game winner, shorthanded at 12:36 of the third after he stole the puck from Nicholas Matinen. Um, he was getting more and more ice time per period as it progressed. Jake Sanderson was also off to a good start. He had his second goal in 2 games, while Anton Forsberg, who actually played the whole game for the Senators, made 20 saves. The scoring was actually opened by Marley's player, Alex Steeves. Stolar started the game for Toronto and allowed 1 goal on 16 shots, while Dennis Hildeby took over midway through the second and gave up 1 goal on 11. Um, when they asked Berube about it after the game, he said, "Well, obviously, I'd like to come away with a win." He said, "But it's a good, hard battle by our team. It was tight. We had opportunities. Our goalies were good, and I thought the guys competed hard, but unfortunately, they weren't able to pull the trigger when it came to the power play. So
Yeah, absolutely.
um, it is what it is. The Leafs' next game is going to be Montreal on Thursday. So tomorrow night they'll be at Scotiabank again. The Senators, meanwhile, are going to host the Sabres on Thursday.
Matthews left practice. We're talking upper body injury.
Yeah, he left practice a little bit early. Berube said he doesn't expect it really to be an issue. It's an upper body thing. He called it. Now, he was also off the ice again today. He was apparently given a maintenance day. It's preseason, it's early. I find it interesting that he's already a little bit banged up, but at the end of the day, the season is still a week and a bit away. So we'll see where it ends. I know everybody in Toronto likes to faff about and wave their hands every single time a little thing happens. It's a long friggin' season, folks. Please just relax,
No,
unclench.
it's just injuries have been always around Austin Matthews, and what's always been around Austin Matthews is the puck, and it usually ends up somewhere behind that line that's there sitting there behind the goaltender. So, this is more of the same. We've seen these kinds of seasons. He had a devastating injury season. He scored a mere 40 goals. So, I agree with you. If he's not injured, maybe 80, maybe 90 goals. Maple
You
Leafs
never
have
know.
Maple Leafs have a deal for Max Pacioretty. Now he came in a PTO. Will he be one of those players like the Leafs have had veterans that have decided they want to be a Maple Leaf, they want to play for this team, they want to be a part of what's going on, and Max Pacioretty is one of those players. We'll see how low his salary is. I'm dying to see that they got a deal in the works. I'm just wondering what that deal is going to be.
Well, I originally, as Elliot Friedman reported on the 32 Thoughts podcast, he's on a PTO, but it's not a PTO. He's relatively convinced that there's a deal based on the amount of radio silence coming out of the Leafs about Max Pacioretty. My thinking is they're waiting until the first weekend in October. That's when you're going to be waiving players. You're going to be sending players down. You're going to be finalizing exactly what your budget is, determining who's going on to LTIR, what salary can be buried, and
Uh,
once that's done, they'll announce it. My feeling is the contract has already been inked. The only thing that hasn't been filled in is the average annual value. So
yeah, well, that kind of holds things up a little bit there, Aaron.
you know,
Usually that's where, oh my goodness, that's where oh, that's where the bottom line comes in. Oh my god, I can't believe I said that, and it was appropriate for goodness sake. let's talk about Phil Kessel, a former Maple Leaf, and look at that. He wants to play, and he's not worried about the Ironman streak.
No, yeah, apparently he's not contemplating retirement yet. He's hoping that he'll be able to catch on to an NHL team with a PTO. Um, a couple of teams have stayed in touch with his agent Wade Arnott. They want to see how things play out in their camps and preseason before circling back. Kessel has been skating with NHL players in Arizona before camps opened and is currently training and keeping in shape. He says he doesn't care about his regular season Ironman streak. If teams were worried about dealing with that, he would be open to missing games and playing whatever role was asked of him. Personally speaking, I hate the way that he was run out of Toronto by the fans. I feel really disappointed in that and run out by the media. I am hoping he catches on. There's even a little piece of me that kind of hopes he might come back, but I don't know if he'd be willing to under the current regime.
I have a black Leaf jersey with his number on it,
And there you go.
name on the back. I never had a problem with him. He had a bit of Guy Lafleur with him, in him. Guy Lafleur wasn't exactly, he's a guy who used to smoke cigarettes in between periods. And yet when he got on the ice, the two things didn't correlate, right? And the thing with Kessel is that he was such a natural hockey player. And the physical side of what he was physically played well into what he did on the ice. He fooled people. His speed fooled people, and he was a great goal scorer. And you know what? He actually was on 2 Stanley Cup teams, and he should have got the Conn Smythe Trophy the one year.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, this guy never got the credit that he was due.
No, and
So
it was more the media than it was the fans. The fans, I think, didn't really understand him, but and I think that the media sort of set people up to go, well, this guy's not very cooperative with the media. He doesn't want to talk. Most fans don't care, Aaron. I don't think they care about those post game interviews as much as what happens, between the goaltenders. That's what fans care about is results. And he scored goals, and that's what he was expected to do. I think that the hockey purists had a problem with him because he didn't do what he's supposed to do as a hockey player, as we purists think he should be. So he was an oddity, but he was fun. He was and he had a good sense of humor too, and he didn't have a thick skin, or I should say, he didn't have a thin skin. We remember him being traded at the All-Star game. I mean, and he didn't freak out. He was a good sport. And yeah, I agree with you. He'd look good in a Leaf uniform right now. And you know what? The power play could use a guy like that, a trigger man like that. So they've got some guys. The Leafs got guys who can set people up, but they lack the guys with finish. And he,
perfect guy for this. Speaking of guys that can finish, James Van Riemsdyk. I want to just put him in a blue uniform and just stick him back in front of the net again, tipping pucks. Him and John Tavares being the low man.
He got signed though.
I
right?
know he did.
Signed.
It's so frustrating.
And I get what you're saying. A one-trick pony. We look at a one-trick pony as somebody that no depth, right? But if the trick that he can do is one that your team can't do, that's not such a bad thing. So I hear you, and I'm on board with you. And the Leafs need some trigger men. They don't have trigger men, the kind of trigger men that I think championship teams need. And that's saying on a team that has probably one of the best trigger men in hockey right now. But it drops off after him. You talk about the great players that they have, on the team, and it's the finish. Why is Nylander so important to the Maple Leafs? Because he has polish, he has finish. What do people like about Mitch Marner? It's not his finish; it's his setup. His setting up. And then you've got Tavares, who's getting old, and he's got it. Most of what he does has to be done while he's standing still. So it is what it is, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go over to news. And I was reading a story to you. I have to. I have to read this. Former President Donald Trump is speaking more openly than ever about criminalizing dissent. This is Aaron Blake wrote for the Washington Post. At a rally on Monday in Pennsylvania, the former president said for at least the fourth time that criticizing judges and justices either is or should be illegal. And for what may be the first time, he directly said people who do so should go to jail.
I, I can't with this guy. I seriously can't, man.
Ah. Now, if you're a Trump fan, you don't know what we're talking about. But if you're on the fence or you're not a big Trump fan, for those of us that aren't Trump fans, yes, that happened. That actually happened. And the other thing I'll say is one word: shocker.
Every time this dude opens his mouth, something weird falls out.
Oh,
And I'm just getting to that point where it's just like, eh.
unbelievable. That was something that that I couldn't believe when I read that. Sorry, I hijacked your news stuff.
No worries.
Let's talk about MPs set to vote on non-confidence motion with similar votes to come, and that of course means do the Liberals go and call an election?
Well, as it turns out, the non-confidence motion failed by a count of 211 to 120. So Poilievre didn't get it. He was propped up. The Liberal Party was propped up by the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. But the Bloc had an additional caveat to their support, and that is they want the Trudeau government to top up the pensions and to pass two block bills by October 29th, or there is the potential for the Bloc to bring another motion to another motion of no confidence to basically cause a snap election.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Bloc to push for an early election if government doesn't top up pensions October 29th.
So basically, what they want is they want the government to put through Bill C-319. This would hike old age security payouts by 10% for seniors between the ages of 65 and 74. The government originally topped up OAS payments for seniors 75 and older back in 2022. So now they want this expanded to individuals who are just hitting the normal retirement age of 65. He also wants the government to agree to pass a block private members bill C-282 that exempts supply managed farm sectors like dairy, poultry, and egg farmers from any future trade negotiations. Both of those, Blanchette is saying, have to be met by October 29th. If they're not, the Bloc will start negotiations with the Conservatives and the NDP on another no confidence motion.
Well, on the old age security hike of 10%, how do I vote for these guys? Oh, wait, they're not in my province. Yeah.
And,
No, I refuse to admit that I can be bought.
and
I can,
I
be rented.
understand.
I can be rented, but I can't be bought.
I understand you're looking at this strictly from an altruistic point of view
Oh,
for all the Western
absolutely.
pensioners who are
There's
65 and older.
nothing. I have no bias here. There's no
No.
conflict of interest here for me to agree with this. Yeah, okay, all fun aside. Whatever they decide, let's talk about severe thunderstorms and the risk they cause.
So we are looking at severe thunderstorms before rain is going to be clearing out of Ontario. Now, the showers are supposed to come to an end today, but there's a lingering thunderstorms threat that could impact parts of southern and eastern Ontario throughout the day. Rumbles of thunder and periods of heavy rain obviously hit us last night. That was not a lot of fun. But it is going to be making for a mostly sunny and warm end to the week. Temperatures are going to be hovering in the lower 20s on Thursday and Friday, and sitting about normal for this late in September on Saturday. The weekend is supposed to be clear, but there's no guarantee of that at this point.
So Ford wants to build a tunnel under Highway 401 across the GTA. Now he hasn't discussed costs, but here's the thing I'm going to predict after seeing what happened on Eglinton, and of course the transit system they built there and how long it took. Cars won't be on the ground by the time this thing's finished. They'll be in the air, so the tunnel won't be necessary.
It cost $8 billion to build a 2.5 kilometer section of a similar tunnel in Boston. This proposed tunnel is going to be 20 times as long. It's going to be about 50 kilometers long. You take that 8 billion, multiply it by, I don't know, you used to be in construction, Frank. If you're trying to calculate cost for that, how much would you multiply that $8 billion by to get the appropriate amount? I'm thinking upwards of $200 billion just to get this done. More if you want to get it done on time.
And this is based on the fact that right now in the world, there is not a busier highway than the 401. In the world, we're not talking about in North York. We're talking about in the world. This is the busiest highway. And by busiest, I mean, wow. Can you imagine the traffic if they're going to dig under the 401? They're going to dig under. What happens on the top? What happens
What
on the
happens when it
401?
floods?
What happens with the 401 while they're doing this? What happens to the people who are driving on the oh, right. They're gonna be driving on Lawrence Avenue.
I can't wait for that. There was one other thing I wanted to cover before we left off.
Please do.
It's a bit of a lighter note for everybody here. Fat Bear Week is coming up at Katmai National Park and Preserve. For those of you who haven't participated in this before, it's basically a photo contest that Katmai Park puts on, where everybody votes on the chonkiest of the chonky when it comes to their bears who are preparing for hibernation. So if you guys don't mind looking at animals that are thick, you can always go to their website between the 29th and the 8th of October to take a look at the contestants for Fat Bear Week, their Fat Bear Week tournament.
You know, there are going to be a lot of offended bears. You realize that, don't you?
We're talking about grizzlies here and brown bears. We're not talking about those kinds of bears.
This is politically incorrect. We shouldn't be laughing at overweightness. It's not. It's verboten. It's not acceptable.
They're preparing to hibernate, good sir. I would contend that being fat is to their advantage, especially if you're going to be sleeping for that long.
I'm not sure that's logic. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere saying, let a bear be fat. Don't criticize it.
Oh, that's the point. We're voting for who we think is going to be the fattest by the end of it, or who we think looks the fattest. So I'll send you the link once we're done, Frank. You can take a look and make up your mind for yourself.
Somehow I don't want to make up my mind. It's not something I want to contemplate for too long. We have to be very careful nowadays. I mean, it is a bear. Wait, I better stop talking right now because I was just about to refer to a bear as an animal. Can we do that? Can we refer to a bear as an animal?
Yeah, in particular these ones for sure.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop. I'm ahead of the game. Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Hey, always glad to be here, Frank.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank live here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now. Eduardo, are you there to turn us off?